Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can analyze the mental health and personality factors that may be at work with the heavyweight boxer Mike Tyson. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. So here I'll talk about the background of Mike Tyson, and then I'll move to mental health and personality factors. Mike Tyson was born on June 30, 1966 in Brooklyn, New York. He was essentially raised by only his mother. He was shy, he had a speech impediment, and he was bullied in school. Tyson grew up in neighborhoods known for elevated levels of criminality. He was in trouble with the law frequently. He committed thefts and assaults, which led him to being arrested 38 times by the time he was 13 years old. Eventually, he was sent to a juvenile detention center where one of the counselors recognized that Tyson was good at boxing. This counselor, who was a former boxer, introduced Tyson to a boxing manager named Constantine D'Amato. Tyson's mother died when he was 16 years old, and after this, D'Amato became Tyson's legal guardian. Tyson dropped out of high school and started his boxing career. After an amateur career that lasted a few years, he made his professional debut in 1985. Tyson had a phenomenal level of success in his boxing career. He won 37 fights in a row, 33 by knockout. He became a heavyweight champion at age 20 and the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world several months later. In 1987, Tyson was arrested for assault with a deadly weapon, but he reached an out-of-court settlement with the victims and was not prosecuted. Tyson married Robin Givens in February of 1988. They would get divorced in February of 1989 after allegations that Tyson was violent and not mentally stable. In September 1988, he drove his BMW into a tree and knocked himself unconscious. It was reported that due to a chemical imbalance, he had attempted to end his life. In April of 1989, Tyson was accused of hitting a parking attendant outside a Los Angeles nightclub. The charges were dropped. Later that month, he was given a ticket for drag racing. He would get another ticket for that same offense a month later. In February 1990, a fighter named Buster Douglas knocked Tyson out during a fight in Tokyo, Japan. Tyson was a 42-1 favorite in that fight. Tyson would win a few fights after this, but then he ran into difficulties with the law. He was arrested in July of 1991 in Indiana for the rape of an 18-year-old woman named Desiree Washington. His trial took place in January and February 1992. He was found guilty and sentenced to 6 years in prison. When he was in prison, his sentence was actually extended by 15 days for threatening a prison guard and disorderly conduct. Even with this behavior, he served less than 3 years of his sentence. He was released in March of 1995. Tyson returned to boxing and won a few matches, but then lost to Evander Holyfield in 1996. Tyson married a second time in April 1997. They would get divorced in January 2003, after allegations that Tyson committed adultery. In a rematch with Evander Holyfield in June of 1997, Tyson bit Holyfield's ear. The match was temporarily stopped, and Tyson was given a 2-point deduction, but after the match resumed, Tyson bit Holyfield's other ear. Tyson claimed that Holyfield was engaging in headbutting that the referees wouldn't call as a penalty. Tyson later apologized, but his boxing license was rescinded, although it was reinstated in October 1998. In August 1998, Tyson assaulted 2 motorists following a traffic incident. In February 1999, he was sentenced to a year in prison. He would only serve 9 months of that sentence. In 2002, Tyson fought Lennox Lewis in what was the highest grossing pay-per-view event in history at that time. Lewis knocked Tyson out in the 8th round. Tyson declared bankruptcy in 2003, even though he had made $300 million during his boxing career. At the time he went bankrupt, he owed $38 million to the IRS. This level of money management skill would have qualified him to work in Wall Street, but he was a boxer, so this led to problems for him. I think part of the problem was the cost of avoiding prosecution for his many offenses. For example, in 1988, Tyson was an offender bender near the Manhattan entrance for the Holland Tunnel. He was driving a $150,000 Bentley, and he gave it to the 2 police officers who responded to the accident. I think the most amazing part of this story was the police officers were only suspended for 10 days. That was it. They were allowed to continue being police officers after that. I guess Tyson should have crossed the book Finding Financial Success Through Giving Away Luxury Cars off his reading list. Also in 2003, he was charged after assaulting 2 people who were seeking his autograph in a hotel lobby. In 2004, he took a plea deal that mandated he receive counseling and perform community service. Tyson retired in 2006 after losing in 2004 and in 2005. In 2007, he pleaded guilty to DUI and drug possession in Arizona and was sentenced to 24 hours in jail. He admitted to having a problem with substance use. Tyson would be arrested again in November 2009 after being involved in a fight with a photographer at the Los Angeles International Airport. He was not charged in this incident. In June 2009, Tyson would get married for the 3rd time. He has produced a number of media products. He has launched a charity that helps children from broken homes. He's been in several television commercials, as well as being involved in many other business activities. So Tyson's been pretty busy since his retirement. At the time of making this video, Tyson is scheduled for an exhibition fight in November of 2020 against Roy Jones Jr. Now moving to mental health and personality factors, Mike Tyson was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and admitted to having substance use problems, as I mentioned before. He was assessed when he was 32 years old by mental health experts. They were there to determine if it was safe for him to return to boxing, safe for other people. Specifically, they were worried he would commit another major foul in boxing, similar to what happened in that fight against Evander Holyfield. According to this assessment, Tyson had a number of symptoms including depression, periods of increased energy, anxiety, mood instability, hypervigilance, irritability, self-criticism, and individualism. The assessment also indicated that Tyson had cognitive difficulties in the areas of working memory, verbal learning, fine motor coordination, and attention. The mental health professionals reported that Tyson's anger made the assessment process difficult at certain points. The assessment indicated that Tyson had been betrayed many times in his life, and he had developed a fear of that occurring again. So he had a low level of trust for others. The professionals who assessed him said that he did not have a personality disorder, and they said he was fit to return to boxing, although they noted some concerns. Tyson has made a number of statements suggesting he might have low self-esteem. For example, he said, "My whole life has been a waste. I've been a failure. I'm really embarrassed with myself and my life." We also see suggestions that he understood his behavior was violating society's norms. He once wrote that he immersed himself in the role of the arrogant sociopath. Now, taking a look at his potential personality profile based on the available reports, when I conceptualize personality, I use the 5-factor model. I remember the big 5 traits through the acronym OCEAN: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So with Mike Tyson's behavior, we see an alignment with a high level of openness to experience. He's intellectually curious, enjoys reading. He's adventurous and philosophical. We see low conscientiousness. There are many reports that he has been irresponsible, impulsive, and reckless. We see high extroversion. He's assertive, outgoing, and sensation-seeking. Low agreeableness. He's antagonistic. And above average neuroticism. He's emotionally reactive and angry. One of the areas that really stands out with Tyson has been his anger. He said that 1-round knockout fights left him feeling angry afterward, like it didn't satisfy him. He wasn't able to get out all of his aggression in a fight that ended that quickly. He was still ready to fight, and when the boxing match was over, he would physically attack people. This resulted in him being arrested several times. He did an interview on Joe Rogan's podcast where he touched on the difficulty of being the type of fighter he was and living in a civil society. He said that what makes you successful as a boxer can destroy your life. It appears as though he experienced a high from winning boxing matches. It was a high that was difficult to replicate outside this activity. In a way, this is consistent with how substance use could be viewed. It provides a feeling that nothing else can. Therefore, it becomes problematic. Tyson was concerned with the fight that will occur in November of 2020 because he's afraid that this might reignite his ego. At the same time, he's looking forward to the thrill of boxing again. Tyson reflected on the purpose of his existence, the meaning of his life specifically, and his philosophy for living. He said that he was an extreme kind of person. This led to a conversation about psychedelics, something that Joe Rogan seems to have a particularly intense interest in. Both Tyson and Rogan overemphasized the potential benefits of psychedelics while downplaying the substantial risks associated with their use. It seemed like they were more focused on hallucinogens than dissociative drugs. Among the many risks of hallucinogen use is persistent psychosis, which results in continuing mental problems like disorganized thinking and paranoia. They both incorrectly believed that psychedelics make people more perceptive, increase creativity and compassion, and actually help people to stop drinking. There was a disturbing amount of misinformation in that interview, specifically around the area, again, of psychedelics. Now, kind of summing everything up from what we've seen written about Tyson and what we see in this interview with Joe Rogan, Tyson really does appear to have an extreme outlook on life and extreme behavior in general. He looks for excitement that he seems to generate himself if it's not otherwise generated for him. What I find so interesting about Tyson is how people react to him. He's held out as being this incredible hero because he was a talented athlete. Many people seem to be willing to forgive all his violations of social norms. Some people say that he was good for the sport of boxing. What he did was amazing. In my opinion, I don't think that he was. I think he actually diminished the sport of boxing by making it about sheer aggression and rage. Boxing has been called the sweet science because there are substantial technical aspects to the sport. And Tyson had good technical skills as a boxer, but as his career went on, he relied more on his heavy punching and less on head and feet movement. Outside the ring, he was more focused on grandstanding and over-the-top statements, usually statements involving aggression. He may have drawn a lot of people to the sport, and he certainly generated a lot of revenue for himself and others, but I think that people were being drawn in for the wrong reasons. He tried to turn the sport into something that it was not designed to be. It's like if somebody was running a lemonade stand and selling cocaine from the same place. They may have an exceedingly popular lemonade stand, but is it really because they have good lemonade? A boxing match is essentially one-on-one combat. There are rules to it, but it's two people fighting each other. It's supposed to involve sportsmanship, and that's what I feel that Tyson never really understood. He was able to harness sheer aggression and combine it with his natural athletic skill to be successful at boxing, but he was often unable to churn off that aggression outside the ring. Now, in a sport like boxing, it makes sense that there can be a little bit of that going on, right? People in that sport tend to be aggressive. But Tyson seemed to take this to a new level. It never seemed as though his behavior outside the ring was a performance. Rather, he appeared to be serious when he said he wanted to hurt or kill his opponents. I think Tyson is actually a good example of an anti-hero. He's no less popular than an actual hero, but just like an anti-hero, he causes society to reflect on their own values, to ponder the reason that they elevated the anti-hero in the first place. Those are my thoughts about Mike Tyson. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be interesting. Thanks for watching.